time again, guys. How's everybody doing today?
Hello, welcome to my family. It's Thursday.
Yes, how's the second day of fall treating everybody? The weather is so lovely where I'm at. It's finally
wonderful.
time it got cold.
Yes, I love it.
Oh, I love it too. So we have a very special guest today, Jacob. Thank you for joining us. He's going to be telling us a little bit about a perspective from the other side. So I'm really excited to have Jacob tell you his story. So Jacob, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey everyone, as been said, my name is Jacob. You can call me Jake. I'm here to sort of talk about a different perspective, like it's been stated, about how addiction within the parents can have an effect on the child growing up. So to start off, I guess I should just give a little bit of context. It pretty much I grew up within a domestic violence household. My mother had trouble fulfilling both the mother and the father roles within the household because the father figure left early within my childhood, and in doing so, she put a lot of stress on herself, and she fell into I would say addictive tendencies. And growing up, whenever my mom and I were, when me and my mother when she was raising me as a child, she would always try to find men that would fulfill the fatherly role because she could not, because that was a lot of stress on her. And so, in doing so, and trying to find a male role model figure for me as a child, she didn't make a lot of good choices in men. Most of the men that she chose to bring around were abusive, both physically and emotionally. They were manipulative, and they didn't treat my mother right. But my mom kind of accepted that abuse because of many reasons. I can't speak on her behalf in that regard, but she made poor decisions in men. So let's just say that. And in making poor decisions in men, she would get abused and beaten, and she would resort to any means to numb herself from that pain or that agony that she was enduring from the male. I mean, she resorted to the bottle, she resorted to pills, and it really came to sort of like a pinnacle during my high school years, my early high school years, when around freshman sophomore year, she became really heavily addicted to painkillers, due to a car accident that she had endured during that time. And in doing so, she really reflected a bunch of uh, a bunch of uh, addictive and toxic uh, traits and tendencies, like drinking and the acceptance and sort of normalization of taking pills in order to run away or to hide or to numb the feelings that she was trying to, or the life that she was living. She resorted to any means to sort of numb that out. So, and in doing so, in the process of latching on to these addictive tendencies and latching on to these toxic traits, those reflected onto her children. Me being the oldest, I'm the oldest of five siblings, and my little brother lived with us. It was just me and my little brother in the household with my mom and whatever man she was bringing around at the time. And all of those toxic traits and all those toxic tendencies reflected onto us, her children. And I don't think it was intentional. I don't blame my mother for the things that have happened. But I recognize the fact that in her addictive tendencies and trying to latch on to numb those pains that she was experiencing, they became the addictive tendencies and the toxic traits became normal to her children, to us. So that's where really my journey begins in my addiction, is stemming from the normalization of seeing my mother do these things, and it was okay for me as a young child to see my mom do these things. It became normal and okay for me to do them as well. And the alcohol was readily available, the painkillers were readily available, and she was too drunk or doped up to really even recognize that I was doing the same things and mirroring her to run away from both my own problems and the problems that I was experiencing with domestic violence within the house. And really my addiction starts around freshman year. So right around the age of 14 or 15 is when I started taking to the bottle. I started with alcohol first because it was the most thing readily available in the house. I started drinking a lot every week, every weekend. I'd have, and I thought it was cool at the time because all my friends wanted to come over and drink, and we would all drink and absolutely just get shit-faced wasted. And it was fun at the time, but in retrospect, I see that it was very harmful in regards to me just latching on to something to try to run away from something else. It started with the alcohol, and for, I don't know, I'd say about 2.5 years, it was just heavy drinking, weekend after weekend. And then after, I'd say probably around, I don't know, the start of my junior year is when the pills started becoming available. I would sneak some away from my mom because my sophomore year, she got into a car accident and was prescribed hydrocodone and some other medications. But I would see her taking them and how she would become sort of completely cut off and numb from her surroundings and the people around her, that the violence that I was experiencing and that was escalating in the house as a result of her addictive tendencies was only mirroring onto us. So I was experiencing the domestic violence not only from my mother and the mail that she was bringing, but also was experiencing neglect and things like that from my own mother. So I took to various substances in order to numb myself from those problems, and it became normalized because my adult role model, my mother, was doing those things herself, and she, like I said, she was too, I would say, messed up to even really notice or take action against my own addictive tendencies that I was mirroring from her. And it got to the point to where I was just drunk every weekend. I was taking pills as much as I could get my hands on them. And really I just wanted it all to end. I wanted it to just all go away. But as a young child, I couldn't get out of that situation because I had nowhere else to go. My father wouldn't take me, and my mother was my only option. So I was sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place. So I resorted to addictive substances in order to
kind of like an escape.
Yeah, in order to run away from all those problems that I was experiencing. And the point of that story is that the addictive tendency of my mother mirrored onto me because it became normalized. It became acceptable to do those things because my role model, my mother herself, was doing it. And that effect that addiction has, that cause and effect that addiction has, doesn't only affect the individual; it affects those around you as well. And it sort of molded me. It molded me into addictive tendencies. It molded me into an addictive personality. And this was through high school, so probably about 3.5 years. During my junior year, into my senior year, is when I really sort of began to notice that it was not only me using addictive substances to run away from my own problems, was also hurting those around me, because I would close myself off. I would get drugged up. I would get drunk, and I would become belligerent, and it was all in an effort to just escape. But really, in me trying to escape through addictive tendencies, it was only hurting me worse by hurting those around me. In my junior year, I began to realize that. I really got into spirituality. I really began to meditate and to self-reflect and come to self-conclusions that falling into addictive things or addictive substances isn't a way to get rid of the problems that I was facing. It was only way to prolong them and to hide from them. And that's not a way to properly address your trauma and to properly to move on and to heal. Addiction and using addictive substances, it's not the way to heal from those things. It's only an outlet to express those things that are within you in a toxic way. So yeah, growing up, I was in a domestic household. I resorted to addictive substances as a mirror of my role model, my mother. I mirrored her addictive tendencies and her use of addictive substances in order to hide my own, because I thought it was acceptable. She was doing it, and I didn't really recognize the reasons or the why or anything like that at the time being, because I was so young and so naive. But as I grew up, I realized that the resorting to addictive substances as an outlet is not it, Chief. It's not healthy for both yourself and those who love you. It is destructive. It's a way to just run away from the things that you need to address, and there's more healthier ways for you to self-realize and come to self-conclusions about your trauma and the things that have hurt you, and
you know, knowing you personally, I see that. You know, I see you using a lot of self-care and a lot of your positive supports now. For everybody, Jacob actually holds a really special place in my heart. We're doing this mess up thing that we do every time.
Yeah, it's your turn. It was your turn.
It's my turn, you know. He holds a special place in my heart. He's been there through the toughest times in my life, and I've been able to be there when he had tough times too. So him being this vulnerable is something that I haven't seen in a while, but it's great that he's in a place right now where he's comfortable to be able to talk about these things. Because, like he said, he did self-isolate and kind of become a hermit for a little while. But
Yeah, and
thing
I
is,
did that. I did that to try to run away from all the problems that I was facing from the household,
Yeah.
and that wasn't the healthy thing to do.
Absolutely. I can so relate to that in many different ways, especially with my substance use. I was just trying to escape trauma. That's all it was. I just didn't want to deal with it because I felt like it was just so heavy and like it was so I felt so hopeless in the situations that I had been through that like just the idea of trying to actually heal in a healthy way was just it was like there's no way. I can't. I mean, so, the substances, the people that I latched onto were just ways for me to just hide and to just mask it, right? And I feel like a lot of us, when we talk about our substance use, we can all relate to that feeling of just wanting to escape.
Yeah, and I think that feeling of escaping is easier than healing. It's much easier to resort to addiction and addictive substances than it is to heal, because it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of emotional energy. It takes a lot of physical energy to even to just grasp those concepts and to try to move on. And it's much easier to just go down to the store to get a bottle or something like that to run away from your feelings. And it becomes a cycle. It becomes a vicious cycle, and it's up to the individual and their support to be able to recognize and address those harmful and those repressed emotions and feelings and start to move on. It's much easier to get into addiction than it is to heal.
Yeah, and it's sad because it is easier, but it's also more harmful. And you just don't realize it. First, it starts off with the escape, and then you get that addictive feeling towards whatever, drug or alcohol of preference you're really into, So it opens up a bad gate.
Yeah,
but when you're in active addiction, it's difficult to see that,
Yeah.
And the addiction becomes the priority. The addiction becomes the priority when it becomes something that you rely on. Other things like healing and your support system sort of fall on the wayside in the terms of addiction, because your addiction is your outlet. When you are addicted to a substance, it becomes your outlet, and it's much easier to resort to those addiction outlets than it is to go to your support system, search for help, ask for help. It's just much easier than to be addicted to something than it is to heal and move on from your trauma.
Right. And your story really resonates with me because I totally get where you're coming from, having the parent, be addicted to substances. You're, growing up watching this thinking that's the way to solve your problems. And, then you have to resort to a whole new way of thinking to kind of retrain yourself to be healthy. So how do you deal with your mother, for example, when she's unwell?
Well, that's sort of a complex question because my mother is a grown woman and she does what she wants to do. And she has come to realize over time that the things that she did in the past harmed her children. She's been able to accept that. She's been able to accept the fact that the things and the addictive tendencies that she's had in the past has affected her kids, not only in the present but in the future. And the way that we used to, I couldn't really do anything as a preteen to help my mother. I would try to express to her the situations that she was in. I would try to express to her that what the cause and effect of what it's having on her and her children. But in the end, it really took almost losing her life and her children to come to the conclusion that she needed to seek help. And it's unfortunate that sometimes that's what it has to come to. It has to come to tragedy, or it has to come to loss in order for somebody to realize that the outlet of addiction is not the healthy outlet. Because I know a lot of people with addiction that have lost almost everything. And it took almost losing everything for them to realize the effects that their addiction was having on them and those around them. So how I dealt with my mother, I really couldn't deal with her because I did not have the authority or the power over her to be able to sway her from her addiction. And that's something that kind of hits hard for me is that not even in the time being during those years of her addiction, not even her children expressing what her addiction was doing to them made her change. It didn't make her change. The thing that made her change for me was almost losing her life. Because one time I came home from school and I found her unresponsive, barely breathing. I couldn't feel a pulse. So I had to call 911. I really thought my mother was dead and OD'd in the house. And I had come home to find her dead, but luckily, thank the Lord that she wasn't dead. And it took her almost losing her life and her children to realize what addiction was doing to her and those around her.
Yeah, and that's very similar to my story as well. My recovery story and my unwellness is, losing my house wasn't enough. Losing my car wasn't enough. My license, my freedom, a lot of times, being homeless wasn't enough. Losing my kids was not enough. I lost my kids and continued my unwellness for almost a year before I finally decided to get well again. But it came down to being a life or death thing. I knew that if I did not try to change things, if I did not find recovery out, that was it. I wasn't going to be here anymore. And I was going to let that demon win.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for sharing that, because I feel like that's everybody, we all have our own, I hate to say rock bottom, right? But we all have our different, situations that ultimately we were like in right before we decided to change. And it's different for everybody, just like everybody's journey is different. So thanks for sharing that.
Of course.
Exactly. I appreciate it. And I really appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing this with us. I it takes a lot of courage and,
absolutely.
It takes a lot to want to, I guess, explain your story and your background and where you have come from. So how does your background help you today from what you've experienced?
Well, I sort of had to grow up really fast. Caring for my mother, because that's really what I had to do. I had to feed her. I had to bathe her. I mean, my mom would piss herself, and I would have to. I was pretty much my mother's caretaker for 3 years out of my high school life, and I had to grow up really fast and become an adult before the age of 18. I had to do a lot of growing up fast, and with that came knowledge and came wisdom that allowed me to realize that the cycle of addiction can only be broken by the individual. Your support system is there for you but unless you want to change, you're not going to change yourself. You have to want it, and you have to really want it in order for that cycle of addiction to be broken. And that's what I did. I mean, when I tell you I dedicated myself to spirituality, I mean, I studied for 2 years. My junior and senior year, I deeply resorted to spirituality and occult knowledge in order to find meaning and purpose within myself, because I felt like that was what I was lacking, was meaning and purpose. And I was resorting to addictive tendencies in order to fill those. And when I finally realized that I needed meaning and purpose, I started doing activism. I started helping out in community programs. I started really giving more than I was. I really started giving back more than I was hurting myself. And in that helping others, and in that giving back to my community, it really gave me a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose, that my life is not just addiction. My life is much more than addiction. And so that's how I really broke my addiction, is sort of growing up really fast, finding meaning and purpose, and giving back to those around me.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a great example of just reclaiming self, right? And as a child, completely just innocent to a household situation, right? There was not much that you could have done to change that, right? But then coming out of that and doing what you did for those 2 years and finding purpose and meaning, I mean, it's amazing. And I'm glad for you that you were able to have that healthy outlet.
And really, and that's why I'm here. I'm not only I'm here to really give a perspective on what addiction does to those closest to you, not only within yourself, but the way that addiction affects your children, the way that that addictive cycle affects your children mentally, emotionally, and even physically. It's not only yourself that you are destroying with your addiction. It is those that you care about the most.
Yeah, it's a family disease. It definitely is a family disease. One person can be unwell, and unfortunately, we all get caught.
Yeah, like my father-in-law I mean, he's pretty much a genius. He says it's what does he say, Karen? A predisposed disposition.
Predisposition.
Predisposition.
And I think we can all find relatability in the fact that we ourselves had somebody else with addictive tendencies growing up. We had somebody else with addictive tendencies that we mirrored.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. For me, it kind of boiled down. My father, I don't think I've said this in any of the previous episodes, but my father was incarcerated for most of my adolescence. I think 9 years. So I was I think I was about 2 when he went to jail over drugs. And then he was a heavy drinker when he came out. But before that, I ended up with my grandfather, which we talked about a couple of episodes ago, where, he was my hero, but he's sick and doing a lot of things that could have changed his life's outcome at his age. They told him, you stop drinking, you stop smoking, you can live, a good life still. I think it was 72. Within a couple of years, he ended up passing away. But most of my life, I've been either around drugs, cigarettes, or alcohol. And that whole piece about growing up, because, I mean, the minute my dad came out of jail, he was doing his drinking and driving, getting DUIs and all that stuff. I was already planning on getting out of my house at 16. I left my home at 16 and did for myself.
I ran away from home as well at 16 or 17.
Yeah.
I just packed my bag and I left, and unfortunately I had to come back. But I relate to that. I mean, everything addiction wise, like cigarettes, like the alcohol, like the pills, it was readily available. The people that I looked up to most was doing it, and so it was just normalized. It became okay. It became normal to do those things, and that's where really the disease starts, is with normalization.
Yeah, because it just seems normal. But then you go to another person's, let's say, house or birthday party, and you don't see everything that you see that's going on at home, you know, and
Yeah.
you kind of start questioning that also. That's another thing that I had to kind of wonder, okay, so you guys don't have any alcohol, cigarettes, nothing like that at here? And they're like, no, it's just a party. I was like, okay, well, that's not how we do it at my house, but let's have fun and eat.
Yeah.
So, Jacob, I know how you said the advocacy part, and I've seen some of that, and I know you're going to do amazing things with that. So, what are things we could do to change this normalization and basically, slay this stigma that we can help our future children not have to go through the same thing you had gone through?
Really, personally, I believe it starts with education. Education and educating because I really do believe that parents need addictive education. They need to be able to educate themselves on how addiction can start, on how addiction has an effect on themselves and their family. It really, I think, it doesn't start with making all these things illegal or cutting them off. It really starts with education and really learning what the causes and effect of trauma and addiction has upon yourself and other people. It starts with learning about how addiction can start. It's about learning how to
warning signs.
How to
Yeah.
cope with how to cope with trauma in a healthy way, right? Because we all experience trauma at some points in our life, and a lot of addiction or an addictive behavior comes from trauma, right? That's education is the biggest point.
Yeah, I think social programs as well, and education can tie within those. Education and social programs could go a long way with helping addictive individuals with coming to terms with their trauma and their addiction. But there really is no safety net there's really no safety net for people with addiction until it gets really, really bad.
Right.
Right. Behind bars.
Preach it.
It needs to go from reactionary. It needs to go from reactionary things to preventative things.
Yes.
It needs to go from drinking or getting into addiction as a reaction to your trauma to educating and social programs to prevent addiction.
Yeah,
because when you're educated
myself.
Yeah. And when
really
the problem, I think the main problem is, I think we're all jumbled up right now.
It's flowing. It's good.
I think from the perspective that I've always seen it now with a healthy eye, we learned all those bad things from bad people. How to use this, or how to use this substance, or how to get this, or how to get that in a negative way, but they won't tell us the kind of like the step by step. Okay, so if you start doing this, these are the realistic expectations to look forward to. If this is what you're gonna do, and like kind of like jot it down and give it to people to give for educational purposes. That would be awesome. Instead of having a friend tell you, oh yeah, that stuff is good. You feel bad, you feel sad, this stuff is good.
Yeah. It really comes down to education and social programs to be able to prevent addiction instead of a reactionary result to addiction. Because if people, especially adults, I think, because once adults leave, high school, it's all up to personal choice to whether they self teach themselves on addiction and things like that. And people that have addictions will tell you that they didn't know the cause and effect that addiction would have on themselves and those around them. And I think that's where education and social programs can go a long way into to educating people on the effects of addiction, the causes of addiction, the results of addiction. But it's just not there until it gets really, really bad. And that's where the problem lies.
Yeah. And I concur with you. I mean, everything that happened with me, the kids, Karen. I didn't know what outlets I had or any positive supports or anything, because I was, since we grow up fast, we kind of turn into macho men. We don't want to talk. We don't want to self-express. And if we do, it ends up being in a negative way, at least for me.
That comes into that goes into a different subject of masculinity roles and things like that, and it really that's where education and social programs can go a long way too, in teaching men that they don't have to internalize emotions and feelings and things like that, and in order to be less of a man. That expressing your feelings and emotion doesn't make you any less of a man than recognizing. And me personally, I think recognizing and self-realizing your emotions and feelings makes you more of a man than resorting to addictive tendencies in order to run from those things.
True.
Hey, Izzy, would you like to check in with who's joined us today? It's watching with us.
I think it's just Miss Kim, as always. She's
Miss
so faithful to us.
I can't pop it up because I'm using my phone today. And
Kim just said something. She said a great story talking about Jacob's story. She said sharing is helpful to your recovery. And she just said, hey, she's enjoying this platform. And thank you for being here, Miss Kim.
Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate it. So, Jacob, now that you are at a certain point in your life, what are your future goals? What would you like to achieve?
Well, I have various goals. Are you talking about in the context of my own addiction?
Yeah. Where do you see yourself, say in 10 years, with your newfound, perspective on things and your growth, and where do you see yourself?
Well, personally, I have cut back from drinking. I don't drink. I mean, I'll drink once in a blue moon. And I stopped taking pills. I haven't took pain medication or become zombified in years. I still do have my vices. I mean, I vape and that's pretty much it. But in regards, really the toxicity and the destructive tendencies I've really sort of overcome, but that doesn't mean my recovery journey is over. It's ongoing, it's consistent, and it's every day. And it's because those things are readily available that it takes more internal and personal strength to say no to those things, and it makes me feel more of a powerful. It makes me feel more powerful to be able to know that I can say no to the things that used to destroy me. It gives me power and it gives me power, it gives me meaning, it gives me purpose to be able to say that I have been able to heal, and have not spiraled further. Do I still have fun, and do I still drink and with friends? Yeah, I mean, I'll have a couple of beers, or I'll have a shot, but I don't get shit-faced wasted to the point, I'm outwardly expressing my depression, and that's not healthy. I realize that expressing my depression and expressing my feelings and emotions in a healthy outlet is far more powerful than resorting to addictive substance.
So if you could leave a little bit of advice for, say, anyone else out there, going through the same situation that you've, experienced, is there any inspiration you could leave with anybody that's going through the same type of thing?
Yeah, I say a piece of advice that I could give is that you're not alone. You're not alone in your addiction. You're not isolated. I mean, there's other people's that may have a different addiction than you, but it's all the same thing. It's all a cycle. It's all an addiction cycle, and you don't. And there is support out here, like this group. There is support out there for those who want to change and to find healthy outlets and to move on from your addiction. There is support, and you are not alone. Those are some advice that
I really, truly appreciate you coming on My Family today and sharing your story. You're so articulate with it. And I love the inspiration that you have fed us. It's going to carry on for me for the rest of the day. I truly appreciate it. Izzy, Aaron, do you have anything else before we put this airplane in the hangar?
Yeah, put the plane in the hangar, like Aaron Wells would say, right? Jacob, I just really appreciate your vulnerability and just sharing with us, and I am happy and excited for all the things that you're going to do with activism and stuff like that. So keep on fighting the good fight, and thanks for being here with us.
Of course, it's a pleasure. Thank you all.
Yeah, definitely, and I'm going to piggyback right off on that. And I'm going to say that he's kind of being a little humble because he does a little more than that. But I guess if he comes back on the next segment, he could tell you himself. But he does a lot of stuff in the community. He does a lot of stuff, especially with his brother now too. And they're both of age, and they're still more connected than ever. But like, again, we can see what happens on the next segment with him. And
yeah, I'd be glad to come back. Just invite me.
Yeah, I know Jacob's such an inspiration. He was there for us when we were going through our most trying times. So I know he's definitely going to help someone else out. And I really can't thank you enough, Jacob. So I'm going to leave everybody with this. Please call our welcome desk if you need anything from PRN, any information for anything. Miss Kim will be sure to answer it. We are open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. That number is 704-390-7709. Sorry, I'm a little blind. But all right, Izzy, you want to do the warm line for us?
Of course. And if you want to call up the warm line, free, confidential, 24/7 in the non-judgment zone. And the number is 833-390-7728.
I think we're all suffering from a vision problem. I couldn't see the numbers either. But happy Thursday, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Sending lots of love to My Family. You guys have a great day.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.